Welcome to a CEO course of Enlighten Me, where we discuss group dynamics in professional settings, focusing on visible actions and subconscious influences. We'll examine the role of defense mechanisms and anxiety in teams, applying psychoanalytic theories to understand their impact on organizational behavior and leadership. After stepping into the boardroom in our last discussion, let's dive into what actually goes on inside. The key idea here is that a group working toward a common goal operates in two spaces, what's visible and what's hidden, much like an iceberg with its larger part underwater, yet firmly connected to the visible part above. In this hidden space, there are interpersonal forces at play. Even if the team isn't always aware of them, they dramatically affect how the team functions. This concept is rooted in Freud's psychoanalytic theory, which introduced the idea of the subconscious affecting our conscious reality. Freud initially focused on individuals, but his successors expanded these ideas to groups. Freud, a physician, first treated patients who exhibited severe pathologies without clinical findings. He suggested that unresolved internal conflicts, buried deep within a person's psyche, could manifest as various disorders. One of Freud's major contributions was the concept of defense mechanisms. These are ways the psyche protects itself from intolerable emotions or experiences, allowing us to cope with feelings like guilt, fear, and shame. However, relying too heavily on these mechanisms can be problematic, as they shield us from confronting integral parts of our narrative. We'll explore different facets of these defense mechanisms in the chapters ahead. Another concept we'll touch upon is anxiety. It's crucial to differentiate between general anxiety and panic attacks. While related, they are not the same. Freud saw anxiety as a fundamental experience present from birth, and he and his followers sought to understand its origins. What matters for us is recognizing that defense mechanisms have evolved, in part, to help us manage the underlying anxiety that's a natural part of being human. Wilfred Bion, a physician and psychoanalyst like Freud, emerged as a significant figure in psychoanalysis during the 20th century. His work expanded the scope from individual psychology to encompass group dynamics, a field he delved into while serving as a soldier in World War I and later as a military psychiatrist during World War II. Bion's curiosity about applying psychoanalytic principles to groups led him to observe and analyze group behaviors in a medical setting, particularly during morning parades and large meetings. His experiences with groups of injured soldiers culminated in his writing of Experiences in Groups, a seminal yet complex book that explores the mental workings of groups. Bion introduced the idea of the group acting as a cognitive entity with its own subconscious, mirroring individual psychological processes. He discussed how groups, like individuals, experience anxiety and deploy defense mechanisms to cope with it, thus enabling the identification of group pathologies. He introduced the concept of the group as a whole, suggesting that a group possesses an identity separate from the sum of its members. In detailing the three group dynamics, Bion articulated how each member interacts with others, creating a web of relationships that contribute to the group's overall texture and character. This network of interpersonal dynamics shapes the group's identity and functioning. Furthermore, he explored the connection between individual members and the group as a whole, highlighting how each member's sense of identity melds into the collective, leading to a loss of personal uniqueness in service to the group's unity and objectives. The third dynamic focuses on the group's relationship with its central task. This purpose may not always be clear or agreed upon by its members, but it is foundational to the group's existence. This task acts as the group's guiding principle, even if it operates below the level of conscious awareness, influencing the group's actions and decisions. Through these dynamics, Bion sheds light on the complex interplay of individual and collective forces that drive group behavior, offering profound insights into the nature of group psychology. This chapter focuses on the third dynamic, the one between the team and its central task. One of Bion's important contributions is the distinction between the four mental states of the group. He makes this distinction through the relationship between the team and its task. The first stage is the work group. The group convenes to work on the task for which it gathered, which is its central task. In this state, the group dedicates all its resources to the benefit of the central task. The other three states are called basic assumption groups. A basic assumption state is one in which the group fails to contain the anxiety present within it. Instead of directing its resources towards advancing its central task, it wastes it on defense mechanisms against the anxiety that occupies it. Bion distinguished between three basic assumptions: dependency, fight or flight, and pairing. The first core concept we're delving into is dependency. Imagine a group collectively decides to rely on a leader, passing over all responsibility for the group's well-being to this individual. Despite the members being capable and proactive on their own, when they come together, a shared sense of unease freezes them in place, eagerly awaiting their leader to go to the rescue. Consider a CEO who shares that he has a team of seasoned and skilled management members. Individually, they're experts at running their respective divisions, often taking charge and displaying high responsibility. However, the dynamic shifts dramatically when the CEO is not present. Although they're accustomed to making decisions with the CEO around, they find themselves at a loss when asked to do so in his absence. Even for straightforward decisions, they seek the CEO's guidance, showing a profound dependency that incapacitates them to dysfunction whenever they need to decide collectively without him. This dependency manifests through a visible need for the leader's attention, a tendency to play down their knowledge and capabilities, and an overwhelming perception of the leader as all-knowing and all-powerful. They demand simple, easy-to-grasp explanations and place the leader on a pedestal, often tempting the leader to adopt this omnipotent role willingly. A recent real-world example illustrating this dependency concept occurred during the early stages of the coronavirus pandemic. The widespread anxiety felt by the public also infiltrated organizations, leading to a total reliance on leaders for resolutions to problems, even those that were relatively minor. This phenomenon underscores how deep-seated anxieties can compel groups to seek out a leader's guidance excessively, reflecting a broader pattern of behavior grounded in the basic assumption of dependency. The second fundamental assumption we're dealing with is the concept of fight or flee. In these circumstances, a group finds it hard to maintain its presence, linger, or focus on its objectives. They're shielded from overwhelming anxiety by their survival instincts. These instincts manifest in two main ways: fleeing, which can show up as members being absent, struggling with decision-making, showing emotional shallowness, endlessly seeking more data to justify decisions, avoiding issues, and denying reality; and fighting, which is characterized by aggressive behaviors such as scapegoating, rebelling, boycotting, verbal attacks, and splitting into factions that draw strict lines between us and them. In a situation where the fight assumption prevails, you might notice the team engaging in behaviors like looking for someone to blame, rebelling against authority, boycotting certain tasks or directives, using harsh words against one another, and dividing themselves into us versus them mentalities, sometimes even identifying an external enemy to unite against. Conversely, in a flight assumption scenario, behaviors such as being absent or late, exhibiting a lack of depth in emotional responses, and avoiding confrontations become prevalent. To illustrate, consider a global tech company that nearly collapsed due to a poor technological decision. Though it eventually recovered and flourished, it transformed its development department into a scapegoat for organizational failures. Remembering the crisis, the CEO and sales team committed to projects without ensuring the development team's delivery capability. When the team inevitably failed to meet these commitments, they faced criticism for their inability. This fear of another technological failure led to an obsessive quest to pinpoint blame, effectively setting the development department up for failure from the start. The third foundational assumption is pairing. The group of the third foundational assumption is the least intuitive among the three, yet when seen in action, one understands the brilliance of Bion's notion. In the state of pairing, participants choose two elements, two people, two ideas, two fantasies, and place them together at the center of attention. Bion argued that the use of pairing is designed to help the group survive by creating an unconscious fantasy of birthing a symbolic messiah that would save it from its unspoken anxiety. The group expects something to be born and save it, but at the same time, it ensures that it won't happen. The group becomes addicted to the expectation itself. An example of a basic pairing assumption. One of the classic pairs seen in quite a few management is that of the CEO and the HR manager, or two co-founders. In many cases, one can see the expectation of the rest of the management members that this pairing will produce a solution to problems related to employees. Connectedness, motivation, employee experience, all these and more are code names for a challenge hidden in the complex relationship between the organization and its employees. It's a difficult subject to discuss because it shines a light on the relationships within the management itself, and of course, no one wants to talk about that. Let's summarize. Bion didn't claim that a team consistently operates under a single basic assumption. Instead, teams can shift from a work-oriented state to one influenced by basic assumptions, triggered by specific responses. This concept is crucial for understanding the complexity of team dynamics, a topic we've brought to our discussion. It's believed that the more aware management is of the hidden dynamics within their team, the better equipped they are to address them. This idea traces back to Freud, who suggested that pathological phenomena could be mitigated through discussion and bringing the subconscious to light. Bion extends this to groups, indicating that unspoken issues tend to manifest in actions. If a management team fails to discuss hidden concerns, they will likely emerge disruptively. The only prevention is through open, courageous dialogue within the management space. Bion's perspective offers insight into the topics your management avoids discussing, such as team relationships, jealousy, competition, power distribution, personal interests, individual struggles, and professional inefficiencies. He posited that when chronic issues persist undiminished by discussion, it indicates deeper, unaddressed matters. This cyclical discussion acts as a defense mechanism, excusing the group from confronting the real issues at hand. If your management encounters recurring problems without resolution, it's worth questioning what remains undiscussed. Identifying these topics can shed light on the underlying challenges to be addressed.